You're watching Silver News Daily. Subscribe for more.
The dollar is going to become an accounting unit rather than a trade payment unit. An accounting unit. Well, what's the market for iron, cotton, gold, soybean, oil, gas? What's the market? What's the price? It's going to be priced in dollars and settled outside the dollar. But tethers and connections and, strings to the dollar.
The financial world is sleepwalking toward catastrophe, and almost no one is ready for what's coming. Behind the scenes, a quiet panic is spreading through the highest levels of finance as the dollar, once the undisputed king of global trade, is being quietly stripped of its power and replaced by something far more sinister, a mere accounting unit. And as the dollar's dominance collapses, silver is stepping into a role few ever imagined. Not just a metal, not just a store of value, but a weapon, an instrument of national security, economic resistance, and monetary reset. The writing is already on the wall. Central banks are hoarding real assets, sovereign nations are severing their ties to U.S. debt, and COMEX inventories are vanishing at a historic pace. And while the media distracts you with stock market noise, a $1,000 silver price isn't just some wild theory. It's a ticking inevitability. Bank of America is knee-deep in a position that could trigger a chain reaction, and the world's biggest silver producers may be quietly coordinating for leverage. This isn't just another market rally. It's the beginning of a global reset that will flip the financial system on its head. And when it breaks, silver won't rise slowly, it'll explode. Stay with me, because once you understand the scale of what's unfolding, you'll never look at money the same way again.
Months ago, I had a consult call, and these have been extremely valuable, Andy. I've done about 830 now in 5+ years. And they're boots on the ground. 1 in 10 is very valuable. The other 9 they're just good people, a lot of questions, and they're trying to learn. But this guy said, Jim, I was involved with some accounting, and every single big bank is loaded with gold ready for the next chapter. Every single big bank. I said, beyond Wall Street and the big 5? And he said, oh, yeah, but they don't have as much. The big 5 have enormous amounts of gold. They're not going to go under for lack of gold. And he said, don't mention this, don't mention that, don't mention this, because they'll probably figure out who I was and do me harm or cut me out of contracts. So, Andy, there's a lot going on, and gold is the future. And I'm excited by it all. But at the same time, I'm worried about something that I call the question of the seamless transition. What'll happen to credit cards? Will they all go away and be replaced by new ones, and every newsletter payment system goes to zero suddenly? Will credit for distribution, like in retail organizations, functions, will it go to zero and have to start over again? And we got 3 weeks of big fat nothing everywhere in the economy. Okay, there are a lot of questions, and Trump via Q has mentioned many times in the last 2 or 3 years, we're going to have it as seamless transition as possible. QFS is going to be a mirrored shadow system. And we're just going to walk it along and suddenly flip the switch. And we're running without any great interruption, which means seamless. And I just can't get a whole lot of confirmation on that. And therefore, I can't be real confident. And I'm worried, like many people are. But, here's one argument that you hear over and over again. Well, Jim, if your business gets wrecked from payment system, then so do another 150,000 or 200,000 businesses get wrecked. So
as the dollar's prestige fades, silver's beginning to take on a role that few in the mainstream are even acknowledging. A strategic metal, not just in theory, but in practice. In the United States, silver powers the very backbone of modern defense infrastructure. It's embedded in weapons guidance systems, drones, radar arrays, and high-efficiency energy networks. And yet, curiously, it's been left off the official critical minerals list. Why? Perhaps because for decades, America sat comfortably on massive stockpiles and reliable imports. But that comfort is disappearing. With silver production declining and demand soaring, cracks are forming in the supply chain, and Washington is starting to notice. Meanwhile, Mexico, the world's top silver producer, treats the metal like an economic linchpin. It hasn't been nationalized like lithium, But make no mistake, its value is recognized at the highest levels, both for internal development and energy strategy. And then there's China, playing the long game as always. China's aggressive solar push and record silver imports in 2024 show just how seriously they view silver. Not as a commodity, but as a strategic weapon in their industrial and geopolitical arsenal. They're not declaring it a security metal with headlines. They're stockpiling it quietly. In all three countries, silver is no longer just an investment. It's becoming a form of sovereignty. And as that transformation continues, the market will be forced to reprice silver not just as a metal, but as a foundational asset in the global reset.
Came from the same guy. Last July, he said, Jim, I got some news for you. This is through the contact. Got some news for you. Trump won next November. Now just put those tenses together, okay? Trump won next November. So when clients asked me in July, August, September, and October, I said, Trump won. He already won. So don't worry about it. He won in November. What? Okay. It's a head scratcher, and it's a time travel bit of evidence from numerous. Okay. Here's one that's very recent. We've been told that there were 750 plane loads from the Vatican. Now it was a lot more than that. They got 40,000 tons out of the Vatican, and they're still pulling the gold out. There's an unspeakable amount of gold in the Vatican. I think it's connected to those, the tunnel, Istanbul, Jerusalem. Okay, it's very murky, that story, but you keep hearing 100 miles of chest-high gold. I mean, it's unfathomable. It's like 1 million tons. And let me finish this little soliloquy. I know I get carried away, Andy. I can go on and on, but I just heard from the same guy last week. Bank of America has 1 foot in the bankruptcy receivership now. 1 foot in. I asked, give me detail as much as you got. And this was a different military source, but it's been very reliable too. I got 2 really nice big military resources. Itchy ear, sorry. He said the word used was receivership. I said, okay, so trustee, U.S. government trustee, FDIC. And he said, didn't say FDIC. I said, what is it? He said, some kind of trustee, but it's receivership. I said, okay. Was there like a tripwire? Was there an event like with money laundering that got wrecked? Bank of America, money laundering, Bush narco bank, can't avoid that. And he said, I don't know, but that's very likely. I'll try to find out. Okay, Andy, there's a lot going on. And a lot of it has to do with gold. Some of it has to do with the big banks and how they're realigning. I honestly think that London got drained and the big U.S. banks are loading up, and you probably have a lot more information on that. Looks like it with the nod. They're loading up for the gold foundation. And I got to say something else.
China's silver play isn't loud or dramatic. It's surgical, quiet, and deadly effective. While Western investors debate dollar strength and interest rates, China has been executing one of the most aggressive silver accumulation strategies in modern history. In 2024, their silver imports surged to record highs, not because they were running short, but because they knew what was coming. Domestic demand from their solar industry exploded, and the local price of silver soared above international benchmarks. This created a powerful arbitrage, Chinese buyers paying premiums to suck physical silver out of global markets. And that's exactly what they did. As Western investors slept on manipulated COMEX prices and paper contracts, physical silver was drained, ton by ton, into Chinese vaults and factories. This isn't just about solar panels. It's about control. By tightening their grip on physical silver, China weakens the leverage of the West. It's a form of undeclared economic warfare, removing key resources from the market without firing a shot. And the impact is global. India, Europe, the US. Everyone else is left scrambling for shrinking supply. China doesn't need to announce silver as a strategic metal. They've made it one through action. While Wall Street chases meme stocks, Beijing is quietly cornering the market on one of the most essential metals of the 21st century. The implications? A brewing supply crisis the West isn't ready for, and a silver price that's no longer dictated by New York or London, but by Shanghai.
Maybe a quarter of the S&P 500 companies. I didn't mention something that also came out in the Intel drop. I'll just say it because it's so important. I can't really say, well, I'm going to save that for the May newsletter in 3 weeks. And no, it's just too important. A quarter of the S&P 500 companies are at risk. And my military guy said it's a combination of criminal finance and insolvency. So, okay, it's not just big banks. So it's going to be like big corporation, multinational corporations. They're in trouble. And I said, how are they going to resolve that? And he said, well, hold on to your hat, because he was told by the military ranking guide. He said, Jim, I'm talking to majors and colonels, and they're in meetings with generals, and they've got permission to talk to me. And I said, this is great. Tell me all you can. He said, there might be a quarter. It's at most a quarter of the S&P companies, S&P 500. So, do your napkin math. You get 125 corporations. That's for the people who are math challenged out there. And there are a lot of them out there, and it's really quite disgusting. He said they're going to be assigned new CEOs and boards. I said, that's divestiture. He said, sounds like it. I don't know what else it would be, Jim. And I said, I don't either, if they're going to be assigned a new board of directors and CEO. So, okay, you asked, and the focus is really on the banks. And I have a really important point that I'd like to make. And we've got to learn from history. I know it sounds like so long ago, but for me, it wasn't. It was the Lehman crisis. It was 2008. And I gave a 1-year warning, Andy, 1 year in advance. I said, Lehman's going to fall. The credit default swap is zooming up. It's almost 1%. Normal is 15 basis points. Okay. The lesson I learned, and that was 17 years ago, was Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan had each more than double the exposure of Lehman in mortgage finance.
The COMEX is on the edge of a historic rupture, and few realize how close the system is to snapping. For decades, COMEX functioned as the price-setting mechanism for silver, despite the fact that most of its trades involve no actual metal. It's a market of paper promises where banks and institutions sell contracts they can't physically deliver, betting that most investors will never call their bluff. But now, that bluff is being tested. Physical silver inventories at COMEX have been draining at an alarming pace. Registered silver, the kind actually available for delivery, has plunged to multi-year lows. And as demand spikes globally, especially from Asia, the credibility of COMEX's paper-silver model is collapsing. This is the powder keg. When investors stop trusting that their contracts are backed by metal, the scramble begins not for leverage, not for options, but for ounces. The whole structure depends on the illusion of abundant supply. Once that illusion breaks, the result is a short squeeze of unprecedented scale. The moment a critical mass of traders demands delivery and COMEX can't fulfill those contracts, panic sets in. Prices decouple from the manipulated paper market and begin to reflect physical reality. That's when the real move begins. Not from $25 to $35, but from $35 to $100, then higher. COMEX has built a tower of leverage on a shrinking base of metal, and when that base is gone, the tower doesn't bend, it crumbles.
I am clear about a reset. I am clear about the golden age, the golden era. I am very clear about the elimination. It's not a good word. It's the weakening and the gutting of the cabal. Let me just give you a quick story. The Voice tuned me in back in 2013 and 14. He said, Jim, the cabal, as you refer to it, is very large. And in the next 5 years, their entire middle ranks are going to be eliminated. It'll be like 80%. The top 10% will remain in power. The bottom 10% will be the foot soldiers. And this will take about 5 years. I said, okay, so like 2019, we're going to get some big changes that'll be positive for the white hats. We didn't call them white hats then. We didn't even call them the patriots back then. We called them the gold bugs, I think. And the people, the fair money, the Austrian School of Economics followers, what was his name? Oh gosh, I can't think of the leader of the Austrian School of Economics.
Ludwig von Mises.
Von Mises, yes. Okay, I actually met his daughter in Germany, and I didn't know who she was. Later, I was told who she was, but anyway, we're defeating. I think we've actually won the war, Andy. I know this is a very strange thing to say. I think we've won the war, and now we're trying to set up the structure for, you call it the fourth turning, I call it golden era, QFS era, whatever you want. We're trying to set up the structure and avoid the booby traps, avoid the debt man switches, avoid the, remember it was 2 years ago, we heard about the threat of the Marburg, which was smallpox and Ebola. Okay, it didn't happen. Okay, 2 years ago, we kept hearing about, well, we're going to get some nuclear events out of Kiev and Ukraine and maybe Poland, false flag. Didn't happen. Okay, they didn't happen because we won. And I know that's hard to swallow, hard to accept, but I swallow it and I accept it. And I got to tell you that I've got 6 starred items here. Ooh, notes. I don't usually have a lot of notes, but I wanted to be prepared for you, Andy. I got to tell you, you've been kind of a mentor in an informal way for the last couple of years. I'd see a video from somebody and I'd watch 10 minutes of it. Okay, I got the bulk of that. And then somebody else would do the same. And then I'd get a couple of videos from you and I watch the whole damn 40 minutes because I learned stuff.
Bank of America is sitting on what may be one of the riskiest bets in modern financial history. And if silver breaks out, that bet could detonate. The story goes back to a quiet but massive maneuver. BOFA allegedly borrowed as much as 800 million ounces of silver, yes, 800 million, from JP Morgan, only to dump it into the market in a colossal short position. That's more than the annual global mine supply. The aim? Profit from falling prices. The risk? Catastrophic. If silver moves just $1 higher, that position could rack up $800 million in paper losses. Now imagine what happens if silver surges $10 or $100. Some analysts called it a time bomb hiding in plain sight. Others said it was financial suicide. And while Buffet hasn't confirmed the position, data from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency showed a suspicious spike in precious metal derivatives around 2019 to 2020, excluding gold. Coincidence? Unlikely. But here's the twist. Even if Buffet is too big to fail, a massive short squeeze could force them and others to unwind these trades at panic speed, sending the price vertical. Silver doesn't need retail investors to engineer a squeeze. It only needs one over-leveraged bank, one sudden move, and one break in confidence. And Buffet might be the crack that sets the whole system shattering.
And I put it in the newsletter, and it adds value to the newsletter. But I want to try to, I've been trying now in the last day or two to come up with a few items where I can say, I'm going to add value to your table. And here goes. I'll give a preface. It was about 5 months ago. A client of mine said, Jim, I've got a middle to high ranked military research contact, like scientific research. And he's very connected and he has permission to, it's not a leak. It's more like an intel drop. That's what they call it, an intel drop. And I've been getting it now for 5-6 months. And I'm telling you, they're deep. They're not 5 lines. They're 400 lines. There's a lot of information, and some of it is scientific. And I don't want to get lost in the Malaysian airline. I want to get focused on some things that are really relevant right now. He claims that the White Military Alliance, you call it whatever you want. I call it Team Trump, the White Hats. It's not just the United States, by the way. Trump is part of an organization that's far more than just the United States. He claims that Team Trump, with their confiscations and victories, mostly in the Pacific Rim, with gold wars, Team Trump has accumulated well over 100,000 tons of gold, and maybe as much as 300,000 tons of gold. And 100,000 tons of gold is I believe that's 10 trillion. So the 300,000 would be 300 trillion. Now, he did not say how it was going to be used. He didn't say it was going to cover treasury bonds. Another thing he said in the related item is that Trump is going to saddle the cabal with the $34 trillion in debt. It's not going to be loaded on the U.S. households. It's not going to be draining gold that like is an extension of Fort Knox, which got recovered. So Trump has got well over 10, maybe 20 times more than Fort Knox. That's just one item. Another military drop. This is a while back. Russia hid 120,000 tons of gold during the entire Soviet era. And they hid it in the Orthodox Church behind false walls and double basements. 120,000 tons of gold. So the Russians are ready. Chinese, they're battling with the Asian elder families, that I'd rather not get caught up in that. He said that the White Alliance with Trump is in command of the next generation high-tech tools, devices. And I could blow you away with a couple things, but I'll just do one because it's a little funny. Here's one. And this
Just before we get going, we just launched the official Silver News Daily Telegram. To kick things off, we're running a 10-ounce silver giveaway. Yes, real physical silver, not a voucher, not digital credits, actual bullion. This Telegram will be our new home for real-time silver discussions, market insights, collection picks, and everything precious metals. It's where the community truly comes alive. Here's how to enter the 10-ounce silver giveaway. Be subscribed to Silver News Daily on YouTube. Turn on the notification bell. Comment 10-ounce giveaway on 3 separate videos. Be an active member of the Telegram group and say hi. Once we hit 500 active Telegram members, we'll pick one lucky winner to receive 10 ounces of silver shipped directly to you. So get in early, stay active. Talk of a silver cartel might sound like conspiracy, but when you look at the numbers, the possibility becomes hard to ignore. Mexico, China, and Peru, 3 countries alone, account for nearly half of global silver mine production. Mexico leads the charge with over 200 million ounces a year, followed by China and Peru, each contributing around 13 to 15% of total supply. Now ask yourself, what happens when these 3 giants start aligning their policies, not through formal treaties, but through shared economic interest? Already we're seeing signs. China is locking in long-term supply through joint ventures in Latin America. Mexico is tightening control over its mining sector, and Peru, despite political instability, is showing increased interest in national resource value capture. There's no public agreement, no OPEC-style cartel, but actions speak louder than words. China's investments in Peruvian mines aren't charity, they're leverage. Mexico floating ideas about silver-backed currencies and resource sovereignty, that's signaling. The alignment is real, even if informal. If these countries decide to withhold silver, slow production, or even just prioritize internal use, it could tip the entire global market into chaos. No central bank can print silver, and when half the world's mine supply starts moving in sync, whether by design or coincidence, the price isn't just going up. It's breaking out of the system entirely.
I heard the petrodollar from all my, it's not just sources, it's colleagues. I got 7 really smart guys, and they're not just from the United States. It included Rob Kirby, but Rob Kirby was removed by cabal forces using remdesivir. What I'm hearing is that it was about 2 years ago the petrodollar was informally buried. Informally, 2 years ago, 2022, late 2022, the Saudis and I'm not really sure. I think Wall Street and the Saudis decided that this is not really relevant anymore. This is not powerful anymore. The real game is with the dollar and the treasury bonds and gold. And that's when they started dissolving and liquidating the petrodollar derivatives, which are, from my understanding, like less than a quarter of the volume of the other derivatives. And here's something that's not well known. It's the petrodollar derivative contract. It's the dollar and it's oil, obviously, but there's a third leg. It's gold and silver together with a 30-to-1 ratio, and that is getting busted. And I don't know how the petrodollar liquidation is going to get resolved. And one of my colleagues said, it's going to force it to 30-1. And I said, we're going in the other direction. And he said, it could mean that the petrodollar is already liquidated. Don't know. We don't get news items on these things. We're not high enough pay grade. But regarding oil, I think we're really on the edge of the introduction by not just UAE. UAE's they're the innovator. It's gonna, whatever UAE does, Saudi's gonna follow. They're brothers and cousins, and my gosh, they got such enormous flat family trees. They got 20 half brothers. Oh my gosh. Okay, but my point is that UAE is gonna. UAE has already done unique contracts for European oil sales, oil and gas. They're going to get XRP in there. That's what an Arab consult client said. And he's just a consult client. He's just a guy. He's in a business. He's not.
Silver isn't just rising because of financial chaos. It's being devoured by industrial demand at a speed the market can't handle. Solar panels, electric vehicles, AI hardware, military tech, every one of these is silver dependent. And there's no substitute. In 2024 alone, solar panel production alone pushed silver consumption to record highs, accounting for nearly 20% of total demand. But it's not stopping there. Governments are pouring billions into green energy infrastructure, with mandates and subsidies accelerating the shift at an unprecedented pace. And silver? It's the bottleneck. Every high-efficiency solar cell needs it. Every EV circuit depends on it. Every data center expansion driven by AI needs silver in its cooling and conductivity systems. Demand is rising vertically while supply remains horizontal. This isn't a temporary imbalance. It's a permanent reconfiguration of silver's role, from a hedging asset to an irreplaceable industrial backbone. And here's the twist. These industries don't buy silver on speculation. They need it regardless of price. That means they'll outbid investors, they'll outbid banks, they'll outbid mints. Industrial users are about to trigger the same kind of supply shock that financial investors triggered in past silver booms. Only this time, they won't sell at the top. They'll hoard every ounce they can get. The market isn't just tight. It's in a tug-of-war between two hungry giants, industry and investment, and neither is letting go.
Down the list, and Mexico is more than twice of all Latin America combined. Okay, it's amazing. I'm concerned about a silver cartel being formed, but my military guys don't really talk about their motive to corner the silver market. They do make mention that there's a lot of silver being destroyed with a cruise missile, something like 17 kilograms. I can't prove that number, but I keep hearing that number. And that doesn't validate the number. It only makes people more curious. Well, damn it, where's the proof? When I talk with my colleagues, Andy, not military sources, I have very infrequent conversations and intel drops with the military guys. They're once every 2, 3, 4 weeks, and I just drop everything. I won't even watch my Boston Celtics. You know what I mean? I'll just, okay, well, what's going on? What's going on? And say, well, I only got 10 minutes. I say, okay, that's good. What do you got? What I hear is that the military really needs silver, and their opinion stated meshes, it juxtaposes well with some of my best intel from colleagues. Silver is going to become a national security metal. And Mexican policy has confirmed that to a very strong extent. I heard that Russia, China are inviting Mexico to create a silver cartel. Mexico will be in charge of keeping all of Latin America, the Andean region, Ecuador, Chile, Bolivia, and there's one more, Ecuador.
Peru?
Peru, yes. I always forget one. It's hard to get them all. But Argentina's in there. But Mexico would be like the dog master, okay? We got these 4 dogs on a leash, or 5 counting Argentina. And if they make silver a national security item, metal, then all this talk about rare earth metals, it's going to be overshadowed by a factor of 10.
While demand goes parabolic, the supply side of silver is quietly suffocating. Mining output is in decline, not because the metal isn't there, but because the incentives, logistics, and politics aren't keeping up with demand. Major silver mines are aging, high-grade discoveries are rare, and with rising costs, environmental regulations, and labor disputes, many producers are scaling back rather than expanding. In Mexico and Peru, two of the world's biggest silver producers, political tensions and resource nationalism are making it harder for foreign firms to operate. Licensing delays, tax hikes, and public opposition are slowing development timelines, choking future supply before it even starts. Meanwhile, new projects are struggling to come online fast enough to meet the tidal wave of industrial and investment demand. And remember, silver is mostly mined as a byproduct of base metals like copper, zinc, and lead. That means its supply isn't even controlled by silver fundamentals. It's at the mercy of other commodity cycles. If copper demand falters, silver production could drop even if silver prices explode. This creates a structural trap. Demand is rising, prices are surging, but supply can't pivot fast enough to meet the moment. And when that imbalance breaks open, we're not talking about a slow, steady climb. We're talking about a vertical reset in price, driven not just by lack of inventory, but by systemic underinvestment that can't be fixed overnight.
Okay, so they threaten judges, they threaten political figures, and I think they own Scheinbaum. Scheinbaum's a Marxist. She's got Chinese connections. The Chinese own all their ports, both sides, I mean, the Gulf side and the Pacific side. It's really quite amazing. China owns, I think, a big interest in Long Beach. We need to strip that. I got stories about Long Beach. I could go for 10 minutes about Long Beach. Underground port with elevators into the underground war. You remember 3 months ago, that big gray mushroom cloud over Los Angeles that they called a brush fire? You gotta laugh. These guys are so stupid in their propaganda. The Los Angeles, what was it? I think February? I had it in my newsletter. And it was gray and blue. It was not orange and red, which is a brush fire. Wake up, people. We're being lied to. Okay, that was an underground detonation very near the Getty Center, and I'll leave that topic alone. Back to silver. It's a national security metal. and China got their mitts in the boardroom at JP Morgan. What was it, around 2015 or so? They bought Chase One Plaza. I can't remember the right name, but Chase and Plaza was in the name. And they got it for a song, Andy. They bought this huge building and complex, and they bought it for, I think it was something like 300 million. And I put the word out, what do you think the value is? And I got estimates between, 900 million and 1.6 billion. And so, okay, what's the story? And Rob Kirby put it together. He said China had a super mortgage on U.S. income tax, a super mortgage. And it was to guarantee a gold lease in 1999, and then it extended in 2005. And because of the recession, there was, it's permanent. We're in a permanent recession. We're in a depression right now. If people don't get that, they're just dead asleep. We defaulted on the super mortgage, and it entitled China to buy JP Morgan's building for the existing loan. That was the discount. They bought it at the existing loan on a collateralized loan for a gold lease, and it involved a silver lease too. Oh my gosh, it's all interwoven. And that made JP Morgan the bitch, the Chinese bitch in the COMEX. We assign you now to keep the silver price down because we're going to rebuild our Chinese industrial stockpile. Okay, it's all interwoven. And I don't think JP Morgan has ever exited that role of being bitch. I see you got baseball. I got to show you something, Andy. I just noticed your baseballs. It was 1973. No, 1974. 1974. I went to a Pittsburgh Pirate game, and it was a weeknight, and I was on the first base side, and there was a foul ball by a guy named Pachorik. Many people don't remember him. Pachorik of the Dodgers. And these two kids fought over the ball, and they dropped it, and the jackass picked it.
As trust in fiat evaporates, a global flight into hard assets is accelerating, and silver is emerging as the stealth beneficiary of this seismic shift. Central banks are dumping U.S. treasuries and loading up on gold, but behind the scenes, savvy investors and institutions are also turning their eyes to silver. Why? Because gold might be the anchor, but silver is the engine. It offers the same monetary insulation with 10 times the volatility and upside. Around the world, governments are scrambling to secure real value. BRICS nations are rolling out settlement systems bypassing the dollar, some even floating gold or commodity-backed currencies. Sovereign wealth funds are reallocating into tangible assets, land, energy, metals, and retail investors? They're waking up. Silver coin premiums are rising. Physical supply is thinning. Even the mainstream is starting to whisper what stackers have been shouting for years. The fiat game is ending. In this rush to safety, silver plays a unique role. It's both a precious metal and an industrial necessity. That makes it twice as attractive, twice as scarce, and when panic hits, twice as hard to get. The moment the crowd realizes that currency isn't wealth and digits on a screen aren't money, they'll run for the exits. But the exits will be narrow, and silver, real, physical silver, will already be gone.
Just cockeyed, crappy, quality, credit default, credit, what do you call it? Credit obligations, CDOs, I can't remember. They just make up names and this is very, very sophisticated. Yeah, CDOs, credit something obligations. And it was loaded with trash. It was like, Class B debt, and they called it AAA, and no one really checked. Okay, here's the lesson learned. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan had more than double the exposure of Lehman, so they decided to kill Lehman. It was odd man out. They're always looking for odd man out. And in 2003, Bear Stearns was odd man out. They were long gold, short dollar. They had to be killed. It took a long time to resolve their book of long gold. They had, oh my gosh. Okay, so, and that was previewed a couple months in advance, but not by me. That was a learning process for me. And from that, oh my gosh, what's next? And it was Lehman. And I had some good tips from clients. I know colleagues on the credit default swap. Here's how it applies to now. Bank of America is involved. I got to say something. I'm not going to be talking about child-related crimes anymore. I've had my life very close to totally destroyed from dark occult forces. And if you don't buy it, I don't care if you don't buy the argument. It means you don't know shit about it. I will talk about money laundering because it's finance. My theory is this, Andy. Bank of America is going to be singled out as the narco bank with money laundering. They're going to be implicated. They're going to be wrecked. They're going to be put through trustee bankruptcy receivership when all the banks are just as involved. But Bank of America has the Bush moniker. JP Morgan, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, the others, they don't. And I believe I have a different source. It's a very different type. I don't want to describe it, but the person said Wells Fargo has resolved its problems at the board level. And that was done over a year ago. So I don't expect Wells Fargo is going to get picked on. It may be more than Bank of America, Andy. I really don't know. We might see some smear on JP Morgan.
The monetary reset isn't some distant theory. It's already in motion. Around the globe, key players are abandoning the old financial order, quietly positioning themselves for a post-dollar reality. The dollar's reign as the world's reserve currency was built on trust, military dominance, and petro-dollar agreements. But today, that foundation is eroding. The U.S. is printing at unprecedented rates. Its debt is exploding past unsustainable thresholds. And rivals are responding, not with words, but with action. Russia and China are conducting major trade deals outside the dollar. Saudi Arabia is flirting with UN oil contracts. BRICS is building infrastructure to settle global commerce without touching the SWIFT system. This is not economic theory. It's happening now. And silver, often seen as gold's little brother, is taking on a newfound role in this reset. It's liquid, globally recognized, and indispensable to every modern industry, from tech to energy. As fiat trust collapses and new systems emerge, silver stands to benefit from both monetary revaluation and industrial necessity. It becomes the bridge between the old world and the new, a metal backed not just by scarcity, but by demand that can't be printed away. The reset has already begun. And silver isn't on the sidelines. It's at the center.
I said, were there many in military research? He said, more than you know. I said, well, no, I know that there's quite a lot. He said, well, more than most people think. I said, okay, what about this guy? He said, well, he transferred out of my group to go to HARP. And I maintained the friendship, even though I didn't like him, even though I thought he was a psycho. I maintained the friendship so I could maintain an information line about what's going on with HARP. He said, HARP is real. And they are, he said, the guy over in Alaska said, we're having a lot of fun killing people. Okay, that's your psychotic personality. And that's why my client made distance. And I haven't talked to him in a few years. Okay, I get a lot of unusual information, but to answer your question again in summary form, I think there's some high-level generals who might be kind of smart in business and, make some business rules. I think there's quite a lot of white hat military involved in digital finance. And they need to lay off Reggie Middleton and give him restitution. For God's sake, this is absurd what they're doing. But I also think that there's a lot of simulation going on, supercomputer simulation. And what I've heard mostly about the supercomputer simulation is it's for warfare. We have a war with China and Iran, and we lose in 24 hours. We have a war with NATO and US versus Russia, and we lose in 48 hours. We have a simulation about future technology and maybe a combination of food and water and disease and things like that, all the Malthusian factors, and it destroys the planet. And then you get that 2012 issue. All the different time machines, they stopped at 2012. Everything stopped at 2012. So they had a global conference and a meeting of the minds, and I think a lot of good people put their heads together. So, and they changed the course of human history in order to get past 2012. And there was a movie about 2012, and it was well done, kind of weird, but I really like the scene where they blew up the Yellowstone. When Yellowstone, it's the biggest caldera on the planet. It's like 80 miles in diameter. It blew up with his name, Woody Harrelson. Look, I'm a movie buff. I'm a sports buff. And I like them both. And without them, I'd go absolutely insane.
So what does $1,000 silver really look like? It's not a fantasy. It's a mathematical inevitability when you line up the forces at play. Start with the supply-demand imbalance. We've got surging industrial usage, record deficits, and dwindling inventories. Then factor in the paper markets, hundreds of millions of ounces in unbacked contracts that could implode under pressure. Add in monetary chaos, a collapsing dollar, and the rush to hard assets. Now look at silver's historical inflation-adjusted highs. In 1980, silver hit nearly $50 when adjusted for today's purchasing power. But that was before the tech boom, before solar, before EVs, before AI, before global de-dollarization. Today's silver market is exponentially more strained, and the economic backdrop is far more extreme. At $30 or almost $40 per ounce, we're barely scratching the surface of what silver is worth in a true revaluation. Triple-digit silver doesn't require mass speculation. It just needs reality to catch up. When institutions, industries, and nations all realize they need physical silver, and fast, the market doesn't correct gradually. It snaps, it reprices, and with $1,000 isn't a moonshot, it's a logical endpoint when monetary confidence breaks and physical scarcity collides with systemic leverage.
Running the show, but he said, Jim, that's the talk, okay? XRP is all through the utilities, water, electricity, what's another one? Water, electricity, and gas. They have XRP payment, and it says right on the bottom, you got your receipt, satisfied by XRP transaction, blah, blah, blah. And UAE had a big contract, and they're using third-party payment systems. They've already broken ground on third-party payments. So I think what we're going to see real soon is like a contract between UAE and France where 20% of the payments are in XRP. It's just a matter of time. I believe that we're going to see BRICS advance XRP in cross-border trade payment before the United States. And it's going to cause some unusual problems for the US banks because they're trying to accumulate XRP using a Securities Exchange Commission shield that's not all that well hidden. It's a joke. Okay, regarding oil, it's eventually going to break away from the Rockefeller control. And a very interesting phenomenon is happening, Andy, you're probably all over this too. The dollar is going to become an accounting unit rather than a trade payment unit, an accounting unit. Well, what's the market for iron, cotton, gold, soybean, oil, gas? What's the market? What's the price? It's going to be priced in dollars and settled outside the dollar. But you know, tethers and connections and, you know, strings to the dollar. And then that's already happened. Indian oil sales, they priced it in dollars and paid in rupee and paid in rubles. India is a really interesting country to watch because they broke away from the British leash around the neck.
Everything we've discussed points to one undeniable conclusion. The world is shifting, and silver is at the epicenter of that transformation. The dollar is no longer untouchable. The COMEX is running on fumes. Industrial demand is off the charts. And the institutions that once suppressed silver's price are now caught in a trap of their own making. From silent stockpiling in China to speculation of a producer alliance between Mexico, Peru, and China. From record mining deficits to a global pivot toward real assets, every signal is flashing red. Silver isn't just another metal anymore. It's a strategic asset, a financial insurance policy, and a potential lifeboat in a sinking system. The road to $1,000 silver may not be smooth, but it's no longer unthinkable. In fact, it's becoming increasingly probable. So stay sharp, stay informed, and if you value your future wealth, don't ignore the signs. Make sure to subscribe for more market-shifting updates, and remember, this is not financial advice. Always speak to a licensed professional before making any investment decisions.
With her husband, her, and 2 kids. And I said, I can recognize that. It's a cartoon, but I recognize you. Anyway, it's very well done. Back to silver. I'm very worried about Mexico, Andy, and let me just make a very unusual comment. I hope Trump creates a trade union with Canada and Mexico because it would enable our country to benefit from the gigantic silver resources of Mexico and the gigantic diverse resources of Canada. And I had a consult call yesterday from a guy in Alberta. And he said, yeah, you're right, Jim. Alberta's oil and gas, Saskatchewan and British Columbia are metals. Not just gold, but copper and zinc and all kinds of metals. I said, okay, all right. And now you got a rift between the Canadian government, federal government, central government, and bankers. Screw the West and control the rest. That's one of their mottos, that it's disgusting. They're going to fall apart. But anyway, he did say that the Western provinces are, when they don't, if you go beyond the tar sands of, I just saw a map and Alberta is all through like 400 miles of oil and gas and a lot of gas. I actually know somebody who was involved in, there was another consult call. He was involved with Alberta property title fraud. It was all the intermediate workings of the property ownership, and the Chinese were involved, and oh my gosh, in just a gigantic crime scene. And they tried to kill him. They didn't. They bankrupted him. They tried to kill him. And now he said 15 years later, he's got a bit of a recovery. He said, I'll never recover from that.
The dollar's decline isn't happening overnight, but make no mistake, the fall has already begun. For decades, the greenback ruled global trade, not because it was flawless, but because there was no alternative. But that illusion is crumbling fast. Countries like China, Russia, and members of BRICS have spent years building parallel systems to bypass dollar settlement. And now, in 2025, we're seeing the consequences. Energy deals are being inked in yuan, rubles, and gold. U.S. Treasury demand is drying up. Even allies are hedging their exposure to the dollar, quietly reducing reserves and turning toward commodities and bilateral trade pacts. The financial system is shifting beneath our feet, and as confidence in the dollar evaporates, its role is being downgraded. Not eliminated, but rebranded as a unit of measure, like a price tag, rather than a medium of exchange. That's the ultimate demotion, when your currency is no longer the payment, just the reference. And when that transition happens on a global scale, people don't just watch, they act. They flee into hard assets. They escape into real value. And silver, with its dual role as both money and industrial necessity, becomes the lifeboat. What we're witnessing is the end of dollar hegemony and the rise of a new monetary era where metals, not paper, determine power.